Center on this 12th day of July, 2026. And so, first, we'll light our God candle. And this is a representation of the one presence and power in the universe known by many names. And the name you choose is welcome here. Okay, so let's do our centering opening meditation. So, if you'd like to just sit comfortably with your feet flat, close your eyes. Imagine an old, sturdy chest sitting in front of you, the kind built to last with a heavy latch on its lock. Reach out, lift the latch, and slowly open the lid. Inside, you see that the chest is completely empty. Now picture all your worries, desires, and frustrations, everything that weighs on your mind or pulls at your attention. One by one, place them gently into the chest. Take a moment to be sure you've left nothing behind. When you're ready, close the lid and turn away, leaving the chest behind you. In front of you stretches a breathtaking view. The vast sea from the edge of a high cliff. Feel the fresh air. Hear the sound of the waves. Take in the peace of the open horizon. Now open your eyes. You are calm, present, and free. So with that, we will begin our service this week with our beliefs. Our beliefs. Divine love is the source from which all of life flows. The direct experience of that ultimate source is available to all. All life is a unique expression of the divine to be revered. We co-create our world with the ultimate source and each other through consciousness. There is truth and wisdom in all spiritual paths. We choose the path of love. And our opening song today is Spirit of Life. So today we have the great honor to have our own Eric England leading us in a discussion with a very interesting topic called What Connects Us Beyond All Beliefs. And so as we prepare to hear Eric's thoughts and share with us, we'll have a meditation on tender self-compassion, soothing meditation for emotional support by Dr. Kristen Neff. So this will put us in the right frame of mind. So with that, Eric, are you ready to begin our discussion on what connects us beyond all beliefs?
Yes, I am.
Take it
So
away.
last time I led a discussion was about Gnostic teachings, and during investigation on looking at these Gnostic teachings, I got into a video that was talking about that, about Paul Hadot and the 5 principles and the 6 steps that he was proposing, and that he was working 190 texts, philosophical as well as religious or spiritual texts, and was essentially distilling that into some very basic elements. Now, I had a few doubts, so I went to ChatGPT and started investigating that a little bit more, and find out what we're going to talk about today a little bit more in detail. What I told you last time is actually correct, but it's not directly from Pierre Hadot. it has been re-manipulated in some ways. But Hadot, ChatGPT would say that about the how do you say, the likeliness of being the same is a 9 out of 10. So it's very close. But I went also a bit deeper, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I think the points that I showed you, and I'm going to show them to you again, are interesting in a way that they are very simple. 5 principle: separation between beings does not exist. Fear is born in the mind, not in the world. So it's in our head. Love is what remains when fear falls. And this has a lot to do with remembering who we are, and we'll talk a bit more about that. The mind does not record reality, it projects it. And the ego is a story we stitch together to survive fears that are not real. And these 5 points are actually very, very central to what I'm trying to discuss here. I'm going to show you another document that are my notes, essentially from the research work, and we're just going to go through a few steps on that, so that you have an idea directly of that. So Hadot was a historian and a philosopher. He was famous for his way of life in terms of studying thousands of pages of ancient texts over roughly 50 years. So he's been at it for a long time. He has also, even though he's not a priest, he went to the seminar to study for priesthood, and was obviously in close contact with the Bible and the Christian religion in this sense. But his central source were the Greek and the Romans philosophies that he put into his findings, but also examined other parts, for instance, fragments of pre-Socratic work, and so on, that you can see here. So he studied hundreds of individual works to come to his finding. Now, again, he was in contact and looked at the Bible because he was trained in a Catholic priesthood. So he was not ignorant of that, but that wasn't the focus. And neither was Buddhism and other Asian traditions. So he did not focus on that. His focus was really on Roman, Greek philosophies. But his focus, as a result of this finding, was essentially to put a framework for spiritual exercises. If you look at the 10 Commandments, essentially the 10 Commandments tell you what to do, what not to do. So it's kind of a rule book in some ways. Hermeticism has more an element of gnosis, of know-how, of reality, okay? And he essentially looks at it for another perspective by saying, how do you apply all that in some ways? So as I went through that, I found essentially ChatGPT gave me a few hints here. So his view in terms of practices have essentially to do with the following aspects: attention to the present moment, examination of consciousness, meditation on mortality, contemplation of nature, self-discipline, dialogue, reading, writing, memorization, concentration, widening one's perspective, and cultivating virtue. So this was the element, or were the elements that came out of his findings, that in form of exercise are to be applied by people. Now, the 6 steps that I'm going to show you back on the other slide one is Frank's speech. Essentially has to do also with the application of these principles. Presence, compassion, stillness, suffering becomes wisdom, and remembering. And remembering, you can look at it in many ways, but in terms of remembering, you really want to look in terms of you having inside of you the divine spark and remembering that. Essentially, imagine a blue sky with clouds in front of it. Okay, all the clouds are the things that you live through in life that you try to that are driven by your ego, by your drive, by whatever. But what you want to do is remembering that there's a blue sky behind it and work these clouds out of the way so you can get back to the blue sky. That's really where the remembering comes in. So when ChatGPT compares Hadot's findings and the statements that I made here, the five principles, then we can go through the details. As a matter of fact, I will send you this document too, so you can review it. But you see, there's partial agreement on that, strong alignment, partial alignment, partial alignment, partial alignment. So in these principles, there are differences in Hadot's view to this principle, but there is yet an alignment in this way. So if we look at the 6 steps, Frank speaks, presence, compassion, stillness, suffering becomes wisdom, and remembering. You see there's very strong alignment with Hadot's work in terms of his practices that he pushes. And we'll talk a little bit more further down about that too. But you see the alignment is very, very strong. His view for these 6 steps would have been Frank's speech, honesty with oneself and others. Attention, in his view, would be living fully in the present moment. Universal concern would be expanding beyond egocentrism. Stillness or inner tranquility, freedom from disturbing passions. Transformation of adversity, using life challenges as opportunity to practice wisdom and virtue. And remembering or remembrance, continually returning to fundamental truth through spiritual exercises. So I was interested to know, how does Hadot's findings relate to Hermetic principles? So ChatGPT listed the principles, okay, that come mostly from the Kabbalion, from early 1900s. But there's also, and here there's not much, or there's lower alignment with Hadot's work. But if you go to the Corpus Hermeticum, which is an older version of Hermetic teachings, then there is more stuff that is coming out. And these elements will actually fit better with what Hadot essentially found. One is God is one, the cosmos is alive, humanity reflects the divine, Know yourself, purifies the mind, rise above passions, something that we are really asked to do in these difficult times, live according to divine reason, remember your divine origin, and return to God. And here, Hadot, you see the alignment is actually very well with Hadot's findings. There's a couple of aspects that are not set present in Hadot's work. Secret esoteric initiation, which is also a thing, and hidden cosmic laws. He didn't go into that either. If you look at what Hadot identify as practices, these are the practices. Attention to the present moment. So be here and pay attention instead of being lost in your mind and kind of half listening, for instance. Meditation, self-examination, dialogue, reading, contemplation, remembering principles, acceptance of mortality, seeing from the cosmic perspective, voluntary simplicity, truthfulness, mastery of judgments, and living virtuously. So these are fundamental elements that he sees that we would all want to apply in our life to further develop our spiritual, develop ourselves on the spiritual path. And this is a view from the ancient Hermetic texts, which are essentially a little bit different, more simpler than what Hadot was stating, but essentially align with what his findings are. So if you look at the alignment of Hermeticism and Hadot, this is a summary of the alignment. Then I thought about the 10 Commandments that we have in Christianity, which truly should drive our behavior. Sometimes we wonder, but it is still there as a principle. And how does that compare with Hadot's view or perspective, and Gnostic and Hermetic perspective? So here it's kind of interesting, because now you have these three views, and these three views actually get merged together. But depending on the perspective you take individually, you don't necessarily understand them as one. For instance, if you say, no other God before me, well, in Christianity, you think about, well, there's one God, that's it, right? But in Hadot's perspective, orient life around the highest good, unify one's purpose. And Gnostics, as well Hermetic perspective, turn towards an ultimate source rather than lesser attachment or illusion. So you see, there are some very specific differences. And if we look at Christianity, at least I remember, I mean, it was pretty much word for word. No idols. Okay, no idols. Examine false values and attachments that distort perception. That's much more encompassing in terms of not just no idols. It has a much broader perspective. Avoid mistaking material forms or egoic construct for ultimate reality. That's yet a broader perspective of this commandment. So we can go through all, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just wanting to show you that there are, depending on which side you look at the pie, which is actually the reality we live in and try to live in, there are different way of looking at it, and yet it's still the same fundamental principles. For me, what it does, what it means, it helps me better understand not only, if I focus on Gnostic teaching, I look only on that and say, oh, okay, that's Gnostic teaching, so this is the truth that I'm going to focus on. But Hadot's perspective in terms of practices certainly brings another component to it. And the Ten Commandments gives me a relationship to the whole thing. So the Ten Commandments aren't necessarily a bad thing. They are a good thing, but we need to look at them from another perspective. Okay, so these are all my notes. I will send you these notes so that you can look into more details for these teachings. I'm not trying to sell you Pierre Hadot's perspective. What I'm trying to show you is there's a broader perspective in all aspects: Gnosticism, Hadot's view, looking at the philosophy aspect of Greek and Roman, and the Christianity that actually correlate with one another. So
I would
this
like
is
to see you go through the Ten Commandments and look at each one of those three versions
okay.
slowly.
Do not misuse God's name. So here, Hadot's perspective says, speak truthfully and reverently. Language shapes character. That's not something I would have thought about when I read that, but now from another perspective, I can see it. And it makes sense in this sense too, right? Do not misuse God's name. Well, what is God? If you think it's a person, then you take it at a flat value. And if you take it in a broader perspective, certainly it has much more volume. Honor the divine through conscious speech and intention. Keep the Sabbath. Practice contemplation and freedom from endless activity. So it seems like if you say keep the Sabbath, this could be the purpose. Practice contemplation and freedom from endless activity, right? The purpose of keeping the Sabbath. Create space for remembrance of one's divine origin and inner stillness. Honor father and mother. Cultivate gratitude and recognize one's place within a larger order. And from a Gnostic perspective, acknowledge a chain of life and the sources from which one has come. It is a stretch, but yet if you think that broader, it is true, right? There is a chain of life. You are the result of your father and mother, and they carried something into your life just as well. Do not murder. Respect the dignity and interconnectedness of human beings. Recognize the divine spark in every person. Do not commit adultery. Practice integrity, fidelity, and mastery of desire. Avoid fragmentation of the soul through disordered passions. It's interesting, here we jump essentially to the soul and the soul fragmentation by virtue of trauma, right? Trauma leads to fragmentation of the soul. And I wouldn't have seen that immediately from do not commit adultery, but in a broader perspective, it makes total sense. Do not steal. Develop justice and contentment rather than grasping. Recognize that true abundance comes from alignment with the divine. which says essentially here, do something for it, okay? Don't go and get it from others in some ways. Do not bear false witness. Practice truthful speech and honesty. Truth is a path to liberation from ignorance. Here too, we see the breadth, how bigger it becomes. Do not covet. Examine desires and free oneself from attachment. Liberation comes from overcoming illusion and craving.
See, that makes a whole bunch more sense to me than those 10 commandments. And maybe they use those little blurbs as entry to a whole speech, because just by themselves, they don't mean a lot to me. But by opening to the wideness that you've found and shared with us, I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I open it for discussion and comments. For me, it helped me to broaden my perspective in terms of there is not just one path. They all try to align us with a path that is broad but very powerful.
Yeah, I've always thought of those as rules for getting along in a human society.
Yeah, so do I, or did I? Kind of common sense.
Right.
You say that, and yet as we look at the expanded versions, they're more expressed as a path towards, a vehicle of your inner spirituality and evolution. It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought that, in the back of the church, there is a little door that you need to get out of the church at one point, that you need to take your own path into your own hands and grow. And you see in this perspective that while the Ten Commandments give you a basic understanding of living with others, there is a bigger perspective. And I think, at least from my path, is I have been able to search this perspective, or wanted to search this perspective, getting out of the little door in the back of the church. Now, it has been quite a few years. I would say at least 10 or 15. So it wasn't a fast process, but yet it always kept pushing the limits of my understanding.
The way you explain, because my religious/spiritual education began with Christian beliefs, it makes those 10 commandments much more accessible to see them from a spiritual perspective instead of a dictum handed down, this is what you need to do, versus it's more of an explanation of how you can achieve that, as opposed to being told what you should do. Well, it's one thing to be told what to do, but it's another thing to understand why. And so I think that your searching helped us understand why those things are the dictum for traditional Christianity.
I think also in Christianity or in the Bible, but I'm not a priest, and I went through priesthood, but maybe Cindy can comment on that. There should be, or there is also a progression towards a broader view, and that the Ten Commandments are just the stepping stone. The first step, if you want to touch religion, here, these are the Ten Commandments, right? If you do that, you're already further ahead. But that's obviously not the destination. I don't know if Cindy, you have something to comment to that.
Ananda has a comment.
I agree with your statement, but 98.73% of Christians violently disagree.
Yes.
This is the word.
And you'll go to hell if you
That's
don't
what-
believe it.
It seems
Yeah,
to
that's
me
what
that this philosophical approach is like the mysticism of
Yeah.
Christianity and Judaism. I think the Kabbalah was it that was the,
Rebellion.
Valiant.
isn't that what Madonna was studying behind closed doors, and it was the mystical Judaism, and that was a little
Yeah.
newsworthy blurb at one time, but religion is more like dictating to the masses to keep them under control because they were too stupid to understand or think for themselves. And philosophy and these expanded thoughts give you, like Kay was saying, the explanation behind the commandments or the dictates of do this more into consider doing it this way because, and
Yeah.
as any rebellious little child, like most of us were, we don't want to be told what to do. We want to be told why it might be a good idea to decide to do it for ourselves instead of just because your mother said so.
Yeah. It is interesting if you look into the Gnostic teachings, the Nag Hammadi library brought a lot of stuff to the open. So, essentially, texts that have been suppressed since the death of Jesus. And very interestingly, Jesus did not teach the same concept to the masses as he did to his apostle, and in particular to Mary Magdalene, because actually Mary Magdalene was an intuitive who understood the teachings of Jesus deeply, something that the apostles, who by themselves were fishermen mostly by trade, had not grasped the depth of the teachings. And so, in many ways, Jesus taught Mary Magdalene secret teachings, not something that is accessible to everybody. So there is a depth beyond just the Bible, beyond just religion. There's a cosmology behind that is way bigger than what is taught. The Bible keeps us locked in. Okay.
Hey, I want to hear from Cindy.
Yes.
Yeah, am I?
Yeah,
Yes, you're
I'm
on.
on. Am I on?
You're on.
Well, in my world of fundamental Christianity, the Ten Commandments were to be literally, strongly adhered to, and they were almost, well, like the one about honor your mother and father. It was like like a promise. If you did that, because I think it says, and your life will be long upon the earth, or something like that. So you obeyed them literally, like several people here have said. And I find in my world now, like Eric's back door in the church, how I just found myself slipping out of there, and partly because things like the Ten Commandments became judgments, like people, you get in big trouble. If you were caught in adultery, I mean, you were shamed and maybe excommunicated, or you went through a whole lot of getting restored to the church. I mean, it was just this do not steal, do not murder. Of course, the murder thing was looked at literally. And so there'd be Christian conscientious objectors to the war, but then you're not doing other things that you're supposed to do because obey your leaders. And oh my gosh, it got complicated. And I find it's still true. Like like with you guys and with all the things presented today, it's expansive. It makes so much more sense, and it makes somehow compassion and understanding each other and not just being a big thumb of God or whatever on each other. And but there are still people, I think somebody mentioned this, still people, I can tell I'm on some gospel outreach sites, and somebody will be a little more liberal, and then somebody else will be like, you're God, almost like God's going to get you. You're just way out of line with, and they like withhold, or they hold the line for God with literal interpretation. So that's been my experience with almost being a little sometimes scared. I'm not scared anymore. Like, ooh, what am I, like all the things presented today? Ooh, if it means this, okay. And then it just, like, for me, it starts to just feel like, yeah, well, of course, everything's expanding, and that was lovely, the interpretation. Oh, and then also makes me think of, here's the Ten Commandments, here's the things we looked at today, and like almost like, well, this progression keeps going. What's the almost like the next step? And there's a lot of like Eric being a researcher and almost like an archaeologist into the past and then expanding it, but then where's it going?
I think we are at the bottom of the ladder here of there are other people or entities who are more evolved than we are.
Well, we just found the ladder, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, we found the first rung. I think Eileen wants to.
Aline?
I think it's important for organizations and people and societies and the world to have rules. And the rules are don't hurt each other, don't steal, don't murder anybody, don't punch anybody, don't hurt anybody. Then you got to go one little step further. Well, what do you do when somebody does that? You got to either lock them up or kill them or hurt them back or do some other thing to them. What do we do when people break the rules? And I think rules are good, like the commandments, the 10 Commandments, but it doesn't say anything in the 10 Commandments about what do you do with somebody that commits adultery, or what do you do with somebody that murders somebody, or what do you do with whatever, whenever, I don't know.
Did the Gnostics have anything to say about that, Eric?
Not that I can see from my perspective today, maybe later on. One thing that I use as a guiding principle is respecting the free will of another. If you do that, a lot of things fall into place because you suddenly have a guiding principle. You have some things that tells you, yeah, but if I do this, I go against his free or her free will. And that should then make you think about how you want to approach something.
But what I understand Arlene is saying is she if you're going to give somebody a set of rules that things you're supposed to do, then you should have some definitive repercussions if you break the rules. And now spiritualism is not quite as black and white or sends people down such a narrow corridor. But so what do you do when people don't behave the way that these principles are encouraging?
Well, here you go. Let's say somebody hurt you.
Spoil the child.
Now somebody hurt you, for instance. Now you can decide to go and hurt them back. But I think this is where Jesus already mentioned something.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody hits you on the cheek, give them the other cheek, or turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
The aspect from the perspective of free will is that if somebody hurt you and you look at a way to react, what action will essentially go against their free will? And if there is one, then don't do it. Do another one. I mean, you could talk to the people, and that does not go against their free will. But if you hurt them the same way as they hurt you, you haven't gained anything, right?
Well, I like the way they handled it in The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. They shipped them up to the moon. They could still live and have their own society, but they didn't have to bother us.
The English or British did that too. They sent them to Australia.
That's what happened, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, behave or you're going to Australia.
Well, I think, Kay, that in that society, it was pretty much the punishment was pretty direct and pretty equivalent. If you killed somebody, you got killed. If you stole something, they chopped off your hand. If you committed adultery, you were thrown out of the tribe and you starved. You know, it was pretty bleak.
Pretty obvious, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but okay. So I'm just comparing some of this to the new style of child rearing that is all the rage right now, and that my daughter-in-law does with my precious grandkids.
Ooh, smart.
Which is, respect the child above everything else. Respect, no matter what the child does, you try so hard not to break their spirit. You try so hard to be respectful of the child's feelings. And yet the child hasn't learned to master their own feelings, so you can't necessarily treat their feelings like the feelings of someone who already has managed to do that. So we end up with really loving, precious grandkids that can be completely out of control at times. So, because they've never been given boundaries. Just try to make it through bedtime at my son's house someday.
Well, I have a question for Arlene. In the Native American tradition, and I don't know what the rules are, but when they break a rule, how are they managed? Unmute yourself, hon.
There's different ways to do. Sometimes they'll put them backwards on the horse, and they got to ride the horse backwards for the rest of their life, or whatever. I don't know how they decide what to do or who decides it. I know that my little boy is 45 years old, but when he was a little guy, he didn't understand. No, like you can't touch the fireplace because it's hot. He had to experience hot. He had to find out what that was and hurt himself. And then somehow or another, it was my job as a mother not to do this and say, I told you not to do that. But instead of that, saying, oh, let's fix it. Let's put some burn ointment on it, or let's do whatever to fix it. And what do we have to do to fix this trauma that you caused? So I think when somebody breaks the rules, the fixing of the trauma should be an important part of punishment, if you will. We have this whole thing about punishment, and we changed when we were raising kids to slap their little hands or spank them on the butt or do whatever to try to get them to behave and listen to the rules and not be naughty and not to steal money. I stole money out of my mother's piggy bank. I stole 7 cents first it was 5 cents, and went to the store and bought root beer popsicles when it was hot because I loved them, and it made total sense to do that. When there's money up there in the penny bank and it's way, way hot and the store's just right up the way, why can't you just get some money and go buy a popsicle? A root beer popsicle especially. And so I don't know where those lines are. I think that's an important question to ask ourselves, like what do we do when somebody breaks the rules? Somebody's got to decide what's something about the rightness and the wrongness of the behavior, and then a group need to decide, well, what needs to happen to make that behavior stop or change, or make this person say, I'm sorry, I did something bad and I'm really sorry, I'll never do that again, because if I do, you'll clobber me, or, whatever it is. Thank you. I'm sorry. I don't know what the answers are. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
You're good at that. You are very good at that. Thank you.
Well, I think, society has boundaries. Every group that you are part of have boundaries. You have boundaries. And the fact that somebody states them and you state yours should be enough to allow the other to behave accordingly, right?
Oh, sure. If
It
we
is doing a
that
lot of
enlightened-
work there.
Sometimes when you say right, I want to say, sure, it's right. You're always right, Eric. You're really good. But I think that leaves out a big piece of the puzzle, because I got really mad at somebody yesterday because of the way he did something, and I paid him money to do something, and he did a really screwy job, and then he went away and left me shit to clean up, and I really don't like that. And so I don't know what the rules are about that. I can't just go shoot him, I don't know what the rules are. What do we do?
Here you go.
You're not
That's why I
allowed
don't
to do
ask
that,
for any
Arlene.
money when I work for something for you.
You're not going to ask for money so
No.
that you can do it screwy.
Ananda, what did you say?
You're not allowed to do that, Arlene.
To shoot that guy.
One consequence is you don't hire him again.
Right. That's
Or
a good
you
one.
contact him and say, this was unsatisfactory. Do you want to fix it?
Yeah, and I need to have a way to say, hey, you broke the rules, and what you did wasn't okay with me, and it's either not done or it's not done right or whatever, and then I got to decide, do I want to let him try to do it again and fix it, or what do I ask for? We all got to figure out what to do, and it depends on the seriousness of the crime. If he's like hurting somebody or hurting an animal or doing something, then you got to decide what to do about that.
Well, I think Linda's comment was extremely diplomatic. This job was done unsatisfactorily. Would you please come and fix it? That's just without saying you broke the rules. Who wants to hear that?
Yeah, life is complex. It's not black and white. We would like to have it black and white for our own purpose, right? Well, if you want something, tell me what you want. Yeah, well, it could be that somebody has a situation that you don't know about, and maybe he screwed up, and knowing the situation, you would say, it's okay. Really, it's not a problem. But not knowing the situation, suddenly you are all over that person, and is it justified? Yeah, it is justified, but is it appropriate? Maybe not, right? So it's complex. There's no black and white solution to our living problem.
So those who are flexible will not be bent out of shape.
And we try people, and then we either put them in jail or put them in the electric chair, depending on how likely they are to reoffend. And we have rules upon rules upon rules about what we do when people break the rules. I think it keeps growing. And you look at the Supreme Court, you look at what we're doing now in our nation and in our country and in the world, and we have wars and we have bombs and we have people that are trained to kill people and do all that. I think it's complicated. It is so complicated.
Well, there's one thing that I want to say to that is the world will change when we show presence. And presence meaning being able to love, to live not from a lack, from wanting something, but being able to give presence, love, compassion. If this comes out of each individual, then society will grow spiritually. But as long and we need to accept the fact that yes, there are wars, and yes, people kill other people, and yes, people lie. Does that make it right? No, but this is not applicable to us because that's not what we want to do through presence, right? So it's really each one's responsibility. There's an interesting presence is actually an interesting thing. If you can live the Hawkins scales, I talked about that before, and this scale.
The Hawkins scale.
I showed that another time
Energetic.
here.
It's an energy. It's an energy.
Vibrational, actually, vibrational scale. And it starts down here with shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, pride. And then it's switched. It goes to courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy, peace. And enlightenment, when you are between 700 and 1,000, it's scaled essentially from that perspective.
Is this the SAT for life?
Yeah, it could be. But if your state of vibration is low, okay, you cannot make the societal transformations that is needed to move further. For instance, courage is in the middle at this break point. The United States, according to Hawkins, is at about 207. So it's just at the bottom of the courage zone, right?
You can't have about on a 3-digit number. Come on.
Yeah. But the world as such is actually lower than that. Now, what does bring this scale, let's say in the US, up higher? If you have, or if you can bring yourself to a level that is higher, you logarithmically, actually exponentially increase the number of people that you touch with your energy into the millions. Okay.
Yeah, there was a book about that. It was a story.
So,
The 100th Monkey.
Well, yeah, I don't know about. Well, I know about the 100 Monkey, but I don't know how it correlates to this. But fact is your enlightenment, your peace, your joy, your love influences even you not knowing, but your radiation, your vibration impacts a bigger and bigger zone if you're higher in the scale, in the Hawking scales. And if you transform yourself in this direction, you will have an impact on your neighbor, on the people on your street, and the people of the city, okay? And this is significant because it's not linear. So you have a much bigger impact by working a little bit on yourself than what you could believe and say, well, it's too big. No, it's not too big. It's actually probably the right size. And you can have a huge impact on moving the world forward. But you have to come to a conscious level, conscious understanding of this fact. I learned that just a few weeks ago. I thought, because I was working on the aspect of presence. What does presence mean? Okay. And then these kind of stuff are coming up. And I said, really? So many million people I influence if I'm in a state of love? or joy or peace, that's phenomenal, you know? And suddenly that encouraged me to even find ways to show more presence, right? I don't even have to go and shake hands on people and work left, work right. Just have to be present.
And I know that that works actually,
Yeah,
because
it does.
where I used to work, the man who had my job before me was disliked by everyone, and everyone worked against him. One slashed his tires. And when I came in there believing that everyone had a positive intent and I just had to understand it, the whole atmosphere changed. And when people ignored somebody that was saying something, I would say, wait a minute, let's hear what they have to say. And so we created an atmosphere of respect and consideration.
I'm not taking credit for that, but on our street, when we moved into this house, there were drug dealing down the street. The police came, there were shootings. Nothing happening these days anymore. Did we have anything to do with it? I don't know. I like to believe that through doing the work, I have had an influence. Kay had an influence, right?
Yeah, I think so.
To your point, Carol. So you see your work cut out, really. Any other points? Laurel, did you want to say something?
Who is Hawkins?
Hawkins is a guy who worked for years, probably 20 or 30 years on consciousness. And he came up with this scale of consciousness and vibrational frequencies.
So it wasn't Stephen Hawking?
No, it's David R. Hawkins.
Oh, Hawking. Oh.
Yeah. You can still find him on some YouTube video if you enter his name. He's an interesting character.
Well, this is an interesting subject. We've looked at it from higher perspectives and lower perspectives and sideways.
Ananda, I'm always curious when I see you do this. Oh, Ananda got something. What is it? Because it's usually always good.
This is not really that good. But Kay, I didn't see you flinching when at what is it, Hadot instead of Hadot.
The pronunciation of the.
I think the person being a French priest must be Hadot.
Hadot, yeah.
Hadot. Do dot.
I guess you didn't want to correct me.
I guess Eric was trying to anglicize it. And Frenchicize half the other words, but we won't go there.
Yeah. Laurel, do you have something to comment on? No?
It
was a very good, it was a great talk, Eric.
Thank you.
It is. It's wonderful. I love this talk. I really do. Thank you, Eric. But you know what? I keep thinking of what's going on over there now with the bombs and the ships and everybody telling everybody what not to do. Don't do this or don't do that or we'll bomb the shit out of you. We'll kill you all. You know, we'll turn it all off. And what happens when you turn it all off? We don't get any water. And now there's the whole big thing about everybody buying water filters because we're scared the water's going to go all to hell. You know? And I don't know what's what. I don't know how to play this.
You were just here and you just dropped down here.
And how did I get there? Energy. By saying I'm scared.
Okay. So now you have to work to bring you back up here.
So what did I do? Not get up there, not think about the war, not think about the bombs?
You can think about it. The question is, how do you feel about it? That's where the vibration comes from. The thinking is just a mental thing. The vibration is how you feel in your heart. If your feeling brings you down here, then you know that you're going to have to bring yourself back up.
I got a long ways to go.
And we always during the day, we vary in here. The
Yeah.
question is, can we, on an average, bring ourselves up into the higher level,
I
right?
want to learn how to do that, and I want to learn how to stay up there. Like I was a kid who was abused. My dad hurt me, and my mother just wasn't there. She was at the lunch. And what do I do with that? You can't just throw that away, because that's like who I am and how I build my soul and my body and my bones and my blood. And I don't know what to do with what do you do with all that shit?
You're going to have to sit with it, Arlene, and think about it and see how it influences you today and why, and what can you do so it doesn't influence you. That's a whole process that you need to go through. If you just keep complaining about it, you just regenerate the whole feelings that you had at that time.
I feel like I'm doing that. When I decided I needed to forgive my mother,
Yeah.
because she's just sitting there watching it all happen, and in a lot of ways it felt like co-creating, and I really have been mad at her about that, and I got to forgive her because she didn't have the tools or the skills or the ability to do anything. Well, I don't know quite how to do that. I don't know what's next.
I think
Thank
you're
you for listening
heading
to all
the
my
right
shit.
direction, Arlene, because forgiveness isn't saying what you did is okay, but it frees us from the effect of what happened. And then you have more freedom of that emotional state you're in. Yeah.
Yep.
It's like all that energy you can use to transform something else, because you've got a lot of energy there, girl.
I do.
True.
That energy is behind the big F word every now and again.
So use that to make what you want instead of what you don't want.
And when I think of you as a teacher and working with the kids, I think your energy was on the upper part of that scale almost all the time. You loved those kids, you appreciated them. It just brought out your heart. So, if nothing else, think of them more often, and
You
it'll
know what I
be
did? I
helping you
taught
there.
him martial arts. I did. I taught him how to breathe, think into your center, stay grounded, remember who you are. And that's what I would teach them. Remember who you are and breathe. And when I try to remember who I am, sometimes get that. A lot of times I get that. And I think that's what goes on when we have wars and shit too. I don't know.
It certainly
Are
puts
there
that
any
energy out
closing
there for us
thoughts
to be
here?
affected by.
Yeah. Do you
Go
want to
ahead.
wrap it up, Eric?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much wrapped up. I think we touched a lot of issues,
Good.
and I hope it encourages you to keep seeking, not for everybody else, just for you. What does it mean to be human? What does that mean for me? It has a lot to do with making subconscious conscious. We know that 95% of what you do is subconscious. If you make it conscious, that's where things start moving. But you see, if you get into Gnostic teachings, you see that there are different people, different type of people, and not everybody's going to be interested into spirituality, and they will not live that, and that's okay. There's no problem with that. But if you are interested and feel called, dig. It's interesting.
Thank you. Thank you for this great discussion, and thanks to all the participants, and hopefully it will continue. And now we have a song called One Power. So let's close this portion of our service by greeting each other with Namaste. Namaste. And this reminder that we are an independent spiritual community, fully supported by God's love and your gifts. And we have a street address to send donations to, or our online website with an electronic transfer. So that information will be sent out later.